Okay, so you will see that the webinar is being recorded, actually, just for information. So I want to welcome everyone on behalf of Chapter 0 Brussels, but also Climact. And I take this time to give a big thank you to Climact for their support in organizing this webinar, which is actually part of a series as well. So this is the first part 1 of 2. So my name is Stephanie, and I'm the association lead at Chapter 0 Brussels. Many of you probably know me already. And Chapter 0 Brussels is the Directors Climate Forum in Belgium. So we are a collection of board members that are active and engaging and learning on the topic of climate and what it means for their business. And of course, transition planning is going to play a key role in how the targets that your companies will set turn into real action. So we're really happy to launch this webinar series with Climact. Today, we're going to focus on the manufacturing sector, and we're really happy to have a testimony and a case study later in the webinar from UCB. And in October, actually on the 22nd of October, we'll have the part 2, where we'll talk also about transition planning, but focus on the financial sector. So I just want to mention a few logistical details before we kick off the content. You will notice that you have a Q&A function at the bottom. So throughout the webinar, please feel free to drop in your questions. We'll have time to answer them. You'll be on mute throughout the webinar, so please use the Q&A to launch your question. We will share a selection of the slides after the webinar, as well as the recording. So if you miss something, you'll be able to come back and look at it again. A quick note on the agenda. So we're going to dive in. Jerome is here with us, Jerome Mason, who's associate partner at Climact. He's going to take us through the first part of the content to dive in on what transition planning means and what that means for the board. That will take about 20 minutes, and we'll have time for Q&A. So again, throughout the presentation, feel free to drop your questions in. Then we will be joined by Anne-Laure Demarcy, who is the Global Head of Environmental Sustainability at UCB, who will share the UCB testimony, and we'll also have time at the end for Q&A for her as well. So without further ado, actually, I will stop sharing my screen and hand over to Jerome. And again, a big thanks for helping us to organize this webinar and for taking the time to share your valuable insights with our members and wider community.
Thanks very much, Stephanie. I hope you can hear me properly, everybody. Hi, everyone. Yeah. So my name is Jerome. I'm an associate partner at Climact. Climact is a team of 50 consultants working every day to support both public and private organizations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in a way which is compatible with science and, of course, aligned with regulation. Today, basically, we have 5 messages we want to share with you. Credible transition plans are absolutely needed. First, because it's urgent. The climate science is very clear, and we will develop that and summarize that. But even though I'm pretty sure that most of you know the urgency level. Next, transition plans are required. They are necessary to meet the EU regulation. We will highlight a few EU regulation which put emphasis on the transition plan. Next, transition plans are needed because it's a way for your companies, your organizations to anticipate climate risks and seize opportunities. We will detail that a little bit. Then transition plans must be targeting 1.5. So today, having a transition plan which is not aligned with the required targets, the scientifically required targets, are weak transition plans. And next, there is the question of how to translate this. And a transition plan, yes, requires robustness and work to be robust in for the future. And next to that, we will hand over to our partner UCB, as you understood, as you heard, and to hear a little bit more how concretely this can be done and what are the challenges that UCB was facing in doing this. So in terms of urgency, you all know that the global temperature already is more than 1 degree warmer than it used to be in pre-industrial times. We are seeing already the massive impact of this. And you know that we are unfortunately on a trajectory to reach rather 3, if not 4 degrees of global warming, which can lead us to unprecedented types of risk and living conditions. So the challenge is, of course, on one side to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, and at the same time to adapt ourselves to the physical risk we're going to face. And the physical risk, we see them already. We see them already in Belgium, in Europe, in many other places in the world. Of course, in Belgium, we remember the tragic 2021 floods that with causing the death of about 40 people. We have seen massive droughts in France, wildfires in other European places, and of course, floods, massive and dramatic floods like in Pakistan a couple of years ago. So I'm sure you know that, and today this becomes very tangible, and this really raises risks. And so scientifically, what needs to be done basically is to halve our greenhouse gas emissions every decade. So within the next 10 years, we need to reduce by 50% the global greenhouse gases emissions. This is not a statement. This is not a political target. It's just a scientific limit that we should try to meet to mitigate the actual consequences. So you know that, and you know that basically one key word to summarize this is to reach what we call net zero emissions at global level by 2050, the latest, which means for the EU, hopefully a little bit earlier. And net zero means reducing massively the greenhouse gas emissions and then capturing CO2 from the atmosphere with both natural and technical measures. So based on that urgency, the Europe has developed a couple of regulatory responses. You know that at global level, we have the Paris Agreement. It's an unprecedented commitment of 195 countries or 96 parties to voluntarily do their best to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Of course, it's we are not yet there. You know that the expectations, the predictions, the scenarios are showing that we are not going in the right direction. But the EU has developed a very wide Green Deal covering all the economy sectors. So from agriculture to energy, of course, industry, buildings, transportation, and so on and so on. And the Green Deal is translated into a wide package, very consistent package of regulations called the Fit for 55. And this covers both regulations like the EU cap and trade, emission cap and trade scheme, covering the most energy intensive companies, but also many other national regulations that are then translation into in each member state or each region. One of the important regulation or transversal backbone of the EU Green Deal is everything related to finance, because one key challenge is to redirect the financial flows towards the climate-friendly investments and to deviate away from the fossil fuel investments or climate-intensive, climate-impactful measures or type of investments. And to do so, there are different regulations and tools that have been developed by the EU Commission, but also by the standardization bodies. One key tool, of course, is the EU taxonomy, with aiming at clarifying what are sustainable activities. Then a second tool is the TCFD framework, which is a very structured way of presenting and assessing the risks that your organizations are facing, risk and opportunities, both the physical risks, so the physical consequences of climate change, like floodings and wildfires, but also the transition risks, like problems of reputation and so on, which we will elaborate in a couple of moments. But one other key tool and target objectives of the EU here is also to transparently clarify who's doing what on climate change and sustainability at large. And the very well-known CSRD is one EU directive aiming at that, to clarify what's the current climate maturity of in terms of sustainability at large. Sorry. So in that context, the CSRD, it will ask many of the organizations to disclose everything they do on climate change, but also on other material sustainability topics. And you may know that within the climate-related questions and metrics you have to report, transition plan is critical. Okay, so it's not only about having a carbon footprint or having targets. It's also about showing how you plan to actually reach your targets. So the transition plan is a cornerstone also of the CSRD reporting requirements. Of course, next you have to monitor this, to follow up this, and to have mitigation action the day you realize that your strategy is not really delivering. So this is for the regulation. So beside the urgency, let's say the climate, the scientific urgency, the transition plans are really required also to meet the EU regulation. And there are other directives which refer to these action plans. There are also voluntary pressures or sources of pressure which will push you to have a credible transition action plan. Next, the transition plans are needed because they will help your organization to avoid costs, to avoid losing markets, to avoid facing difficulties that are just popping up because of the physical risks. So I mentioned them already, droughts or heat waves in cities, for instance, transportation disruption based on floodings, for instance, or value chain disruptions. And then we have also the transition risks, which are sometimes a little bit more unclear for many organizations. Basically, the transition risks are all the business impacts coming from ambitious behavioral changes in the society or ambitious regulation. So typically our obligation or wish to move to new technologies, the fact that you have to electrify the vehicle fleets, for instance, or to renovate buildings. This means additional capex for you or for your clients or for your suppliers, which at some point will mean additional costs. Of course, there is a regulation preventing from conducting historical activities or putting additional pressure on some sectors. But then we have also other transition risk sources, like reputation sources. Today, in a world in transition, it is mandatory to be credible, to be consistent in the way you act on climate. And it's important also to show what you're doing without claiming to be the best in class if you're not. And next, there are some other deeper market and societal changes which can be disruptive for your business as well. Think, for instance, in terms of circular economy. If we massively use recycled materials, we have a deep change to in the manufacturing industry to anticipate. If we suddenly manage to consume way more locally, it means that our logistics sector may be profoundly impacted in one way or another. Of course, all these risks also mean sources of opportunities for those who can anticipate this and position themselves on the right solutions that are behind. So again, because of the physical risk and the transition risks, a transition plan is also a mandatory tool for your organizations, whether you're in a big organization or in a smaller one. Maybe just to deep dive a little bit more on reputational risks. You know that, of course, some sectors are heavily visible. They are like the aviation sector or the B2C sector will have to face clients or NGOs questions and remarks. But this is more and more trickling down to the value chains into some other industries. And what we also observe these days is that reputation risks, so just image risks, today may become legal risks. So there are more and more companies that are facing suits from the civil society or from clients or competitors because of the potential disconnect between what they claim and what they actually do. You know that the EU is also working on regulation to frame this a little bit, especially on the product claims. So in the future, it won't be possible to claim that, for instance, that you have a carbon neutral product without very, very strong evidences behind of credibility. So reputation becomes legal at the moment, just to mention that these risks are not totally different and may also have severe business impact. In terms of opportunity, of course, you can look at it differently. a good transition plan will help strengthening your reputation, so attracting new talents to work for your company, to open new markets, and to maybe strengthen your positioning. This may also have impact on the confidence level of your investment partners. You may know that Climact is working quite a lot for banks, for insurances, private equities, private debt providers, and so on. And we see today that the transition plan and the targets together are becoming key criteria to define the new engagement procedure, the new product, and so on of these, or the new strategy of these financial institutions. Of course, anticipating climate risk may also be an innovative or a competitive advantage if you develop the right products at the right time. It's, of course, the more efficient you are on your own logistic flows or material consumption or energy consumption, the more you will reduce your costs in most cases. So it's important in terms of efficiency. Of course, you'll be more compliant with the regulation, and you may have more resilient supply chains. You know that this is really a raising topic for most companies today. So next to the risk, we also have the opportunities. This is also demonstrated by recent studies, which showing first on your left-hand side that there is an increasing amount of disclosure due to the regulation, but also due to the supply chain impact, where many companies are engaging the suppliers or their customers in disclosing. And you see on the right-hand side, that's on some specific stock exchange indexes, that the climate change leaders, so those disclosing and actually acting on climate, so this is the red line on your right-hand side, are actually performing better, at least from a stock perspective. And it is also demonstrated by other scientific studies that this market confidence and these internal operational efficiency both have basically financial benefits for the companies. So the transition plans are urgent. They will help you anticipating regulation, and they are also the best way to actually anticipate risk and seize opportunities from climate change. But of course, they need to be designed in a way which is relevant. And first, they need to target something which is compatible with a 1.5 trajectory. So basically, if you want to develop a climate strategy, the way we use to support our clients basically is to work with 5 key steps. First, you need to really understand what's at stake. So what are the big challenges, the risks, the opportunities for your company and for your sector? And you need to make sure that your board is aware of this through trainings, through assessments, so qualifications of, for instance, climate risks. Next, you need to measure where you are. You need to measure what's your footprint, the footprint of your organization, of your investments, of your products. What are the avoided emissions by your products, and so on and so on. You may need to model the risk in the future. Of course, you need to develop data infrastructures and maybe tools to report on this, to continuously monitor what's your climate performance. And then you need to develop your transition plan. And the challenge here is basically twofold. On one hand, you need to develop targets and a vision. And the other hand, you need to prioritize the actions and to plan them and to effectively implement them before you can communicate, disclose, or certify what you're doing and engaging your stakeholders in your plan. So having the right targets and the right vision, again, is a way to show that you're consistent with your values, your sustainability values. It's also a way to build your reputation, to unlock some market opportunities, to increase the market confidence, to improve your own performance, and so on. It is demonstrated that the targets themselves are already triggering all these benefits. The transition plan, the actual implementation of the plan will reinforce this, but the targets themselves already are key to do so. And you may know that the number of companies committing to targets that are aligned with science, so for instance, in the formal framework of the Science-Based Target Initiative, the number of companies involved in that is exponentially growing, both at worldwide level, but also at Belgian level, for instance. So it is a trend, it is a deep trend, which at some point will be unavoidable for most of the companies, for the most of the large companies. And for the smaller companies, you may have some consequences of that, because your suppliers or clients may ask you to contribute to their own strategies or to their own targets. So today, I think we are about we have more than 6,000 companies worldwide involved in that scheme, and just to put it like this, to show the growing trend, at Climact, this is becoming our core business. Of course, you need to make a distinction between short-term targets, typically 5 to 10 years targets, and then the long-term targets. You need also to pay attention to the net zero buzzword. Remember that before you can claim to be net zero, you need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 90% for the entire value chain, including the full scope 3. So it means you divide by 10 your value chain impact before you can claim to be net zero. And of course, you'll need to think about removing CO2 from the atmosphere, maybe beyond your value chain, but that's for the future. That will be a challenge to address after 2030. I don't think I have time to spend too much time on the targets, but of course, any target must be based on a robust carbon footprint. It must be aligned with the trajectories. So with robust scientific data behind. It must encompass your entire value chain, and it must be also aligned with regulations and so on. So this is for the let's say the main reasons why you should start working on your action plan, and you understand that the targets are a elementary key element, sorry, of your action plan. Now the question is how to develop this, and how to develop it in a way which is robust enough. So basically, when you develop your action plan, you first need to explore the transition opportunities. You need to explore them with your stakeholders, and then you will need to prioritize. So to make a short selection on that, how to do that first, of course, based on the CO2 expected impact, so the emissions impact you can expect from each measure, but also on the financial aspect, maybe the visibility aspects, maybe the ease of implementation within your organization. And that may differ from business unit to business unit, from country to country. And once you have these action lists, once it's planned with clear responsibilities, you need to engage people. You need to engage your own internal stakeholders, but also your external stakeholders. You know that engagement programs to onboard your suppliers or your clients, depending on your industry, are essential to do so, because you don't always influence or control your downstream or upstream emissions. So you need to engage others. And you also need to design the measures in a way which is adapted, tailored to your company reality. If you think, for instance, in terms of green procurement or energy investment strategies for financial institutions and so on, this must be tailored to your actual context. But then the big challenge, once you have this, is to conduct the actual change management. And the actual change management requires governance, tools, incentives. We'll get back to that, but also data. You know that data is today a very key challenge for everybody, especially in the financial sector. But we will discuss it in the future webinar, but also in other industries. But change management also means downscaling your strategy, your action plan at the business unit level, and this may be a real challenge as well. So it takes time, resources, and so on, and this must be anticipated as well. So in terms of board's role in that, the board should follow the process, the strategy development at every point, and need to support it, or to be informed, or to contribute to or to make the decisions. So here, if you look at the typical process of developing a sustainability strategy or climate strategy, so in a nutshell, a transition plan. You see that the board needs to kick off the process by clearly demonstrating its commitment, its ambition, and its vision. Of course, then it can delegate the implementation and the direction of it to its chief sustainability officer. And other people will be involved also in the directions, like the CFO, because of the regulatory or auditing obligations, but also the risks team or the strategic teams. The exco also needs to be trained. We see it with all our clients. Trainings doesn't only mean to have a short introduction on climate change. It needs to be a real program where you don't scale the climate topics and urgency at the business level to make sure that it becomes a reality and it becomes clear what will be the future trade-off to make. Then you need to iterate with your stakeholders to develop the action plan. So it will encompass all your internal teams, but also maybe some other external stakeholders. And then you need to finalize the strategy. Basically, for the board, it means to take the right decisions, to make the choices, and that's really not easy because there will be trade-offs between business plans, between short-term or long-term climate plans, let's say. And then you need to engage to improve the culture, to change and to implement it. And there again, the board is essential. Now, talking about a transition plan, one question could be, what actually do we need to target at the end? What's the type of deliverable, or what's the type of scope of a transition plan? And hopefully the literature and frameworks are popping up these days to confirm this. And we would like to share with you a little bit the vision we have on this, based on our experience and based on these frameworks. So first, your transition plan must be very clear on the 1.5 alignment ambition. So it must be clear, follow the scientific frameworks. There should be also you should pay attention also to the short-term target, like 2030, 2040, and also the long-term scientifically demonstrated or known trajectories. And this may depend from sector to sector, of course. What does that mean in terms of challenges for the company? First is to pay attention to the entire organization and to the entire value chain, as I told you. And what the board should do here for this ambition, these targets, is first to drive, to lead the ambition, not only follow it, and also make it very public. When we say public, a public statement, we mean towards the collaborators internally, but also to the clients, to your suppliers, to the financial partners, and so on and so on. And next to the ambition, you need to have a second pillar covering a multi-dimensional action plan to show that it's robust, that you have quantified the action plan, that you have scenarios, that you have conducted sensitivity analysis to anticipate the future, which of course will not be like you have planned. You need to engage the right stakeholders. You need to have specific actions, for instance, on fossil fuels, infrastructures, products, or applications. And that again raises challenges for your company. So it needs to be aligned with your business strategy, and that's not always easy, especially in the short term. And you need to find some sort of trade-off between pragmatism and climate ambition. Each company is different. We will hear Anne-Laure on this, but the board has a key role as well here to clarify the priorities. And then you need to make the board accountable. You need to have the governance, otherwise this transition plan will remain unimplemented. So you need to have incentives. It needs to be transparent. You need to maybe to acquire or to develop skills internally to make sure that you can answer all the challenges of the transition. That means in terms of challenges, data, culture to change. You need flexibility to adapt your plan over time. Maybe also to adapt it to new scientific evidences in the future, which may force you to accelerate in some sectors. And here again, the board is key. First, it needs to be accountable itself. So board members or exco members need to have incentives, including financial incentives. And also they need to discuss this on a regular basis to make sure that they decide, they follow up the process. So in terms of prioritizing the action, there are plenty of tools you can use. So first, you need to explore all the different potential actions through brainstorming, through support of external experts, and through clear methodologies to identify all the different types of actions to, for instance, avoid emissions or to reduce emissions through efficiency, or to shift from fossil fuels to low carbon fuels, or to shift from historical materials to new materials, and so on and so on. And then you need to prioritize what's the most important based on your own KPIs. Of course, the greenhouse gas emissions is one important measure, but that's not the only one. Financial impact, reputational impact, ease of implementation, and so on and so on. And next, you need to report this, to make scenarios, to rank the options, for instance, with the cost abatement curves on your left-hand side, showing what are the no regrets short-term actions you need to implement, to maybe even save money, to be able to invest later on in higher capex or in more cost-intensive measures, which in the end, cumulated, will help you achieving your targets. And basically, that should help you showing that despite the business growth, despite your reference scenarios, your actions hopefully will help you reaching the targets and be confident for the future. So there are plenty of tools. You need also to have plenty of dashboards to monitor action by action. Who's in charge of each action? What's the budget plan for this? What's the state of the expenses? What's the level of implementation? What's the feedback from the teams? And again, in the manufacturing industry, this may differ a lot from product line to product line, or from business units or geographies to geographies. So this is a living world, is a living dashboard, and their flexibility over time is really essential. And of course, in the future, to make it you cannot just rely on one transition plan. You will have to deep dive on some topics in the future, like the internal culture to change, or the internal carbon pricing, or the actual business model change. At some point, you may realize that the usual actions to reach your targets are not sufficient, and you need to change the way you work. Business model changes can go from deep changes in your supply chain, which type of materials, which amount of recycled materials, and so on. But also it can mean a lot of commercial activities or product design, like renting rather than selling, and so on. We have plenty of examples from interesting questions raised by our clients on this. So many deep dives will be necessary in the future. So don't take it as something you can sleep on. The transition plan is really something living for your future. So 5 messages that I hope you took screenshots of, or you have good notes on. First, transition plans are urgent. They are needed to face regulation. They're also needed and useful to anticipate risk and opportunities. They require to be aligned with the 1.15 targets, and they also require robustness, both in the process to develop it, but also in terms of granularity, data, and actual actions that are planned. So with this, I think I have reached my time, and I'm really looking forward for your questions.
Thanks a lot, Jerome. I'll actually kick off and give a minute for the participants to put in a few more questions in the chat, but I have one question on my side, which I'd like to start off with. This is a question specifically for the manufacturing industry. What do you see as some of the sort of unknowns if we're talking about a transition plan towards 2050? there will be some maybe technologies that are not yet mature enough, or some sort of question marks in the journey that we're not sure how we're going to get there, probably. So what are some of those things which you think are the biggest unknowns, and how should the board deal with those unknowns in terms of signing off on a transition plan with some question marks along the journey where they're not sure exactly how it's going to play out? Actually, what would be your advice on that?
Yeah, thanks. Very, very good question. That could be a topic for one webinar as such, and the how to deal with uncertainty. And this is one of the key challenges of the board today, indeed, because you don't you don't always have the data to fully understand what's your current situation today and to build your strategy. So you start with uncertainty even before thinking about an action plan. You start with uncertainty when you try to assess where you are today, what's the diagnosis of the current situation. And this is already a very big challenge. The answer to that, of course, is to, next to a transition plan, or in parallel to that, is to have a data governance roadmap to improve your visibility, to improve your compass and your tools to reduce uncertainty in the future. You also may need to involve your stakeholders to provide you with more clarity on the upstream or downstream impact in terms of data. So that's a very first challenge, which won't be solved today. And at the same time, you cannot wait for developing your action plan just because of uncertainty, okay? Because the world is uncertain, we see the effect of climate change, and we know that we will have to deal with that in the future. So you need to develop also a culture of risk appetite or risk anticipation to be ready to adapt to the shocks and to be resilient to that. So that's a question of culture, and that means that the board there again needs to be ready for. And maybe one other very important point, you also have uncertainties on all the dimensions of your action plan. So the impact of your actions, the technologies that could deliver or not, maybe new technologies popping up, as you mentioned. You may have also changes in the consumer behaviors, in your client relationships, in your supply chain, potential disruption, and so on. And so one key answer to that is also to work with scenarios. So you need to have flexible tools internally to project yourself to the future and to stress your plan, to check what could be the shocks and what could be your response to that. So this is one way we try to support our client, is also to develop the scenarios and the tools to be a bit more flexible in the future. Talking about technology, there is uncertainty on many different technologies, especially in transportation, for instance, or in materials. But we see that this is not a reason for waiting. Again, we know enough of the solutions today to already kick off the work and to keep an eye on the radar for the midterm, long term on the upcoming technologies. If possible, you need to have CapEx plans to test things. For instance, carbon capture and storage. You know that the steel industry or the cement industry needs to plan pilot testing, maybe with partners, to be ready at some point to invest in the right technologies. Same for if you take low carbon fuels for the shipping industry, the marine industry, for instance. We don't know what will be the solutions in the future, but you need to test, to pilot things, and to follow the evolution. And at some point, you will need to make a choice. Hope that answered your question, Stephanie.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thanks a lot. And I like this point about scenario planning. It's so true, actually. We don't know where we're headed, actually.
Okay.
So another question in the chat, actually. Oh, sorry. Shall I read them out?
I saw a question from Anton asking whether or not the CSRD is actually asking for having a 1.5 or science-based target aligned. Actually, yes and no. So first, the CSRD is just an obligation of transparency. So remember that you can fill in your ESRS criteria and just say we don't do anything, and you will have done the job for the CSRD. The problem is that you openly disclose that you don't do anything. That may be a problem for your partners, for your financial institutions, and so on. So basically you may want to answer all these questions with credible or appealing answers. And one question is, do you have targets? And then the next question is, are these targets 1.5 aligned? And the big question is, how do I know whether my target is aligned? Well, the answer for both the CSRD and maybe the CSDDD, for those who follow that upcoming directive, so on the due diligence, all these regulations, they ask you to look at your sector and to look at what are the best practices for setting targets and for developing the action plan. And basically, what we observe is that for any sector where science-based targets has developed specific trajectories, then this becomes the best practice. So does the CSRD force you to have a 1.5? Not officially, but in the end, that's our recommendation, to make sure that you move towards a SBT or 1.5 aligned trajectory with some scientific evidences that this is really for your sector the right trajectory. I see another question
on that one, Sharon. Does the CSRD regulation specify anything in the level of detail of the transition plan, or, like you said, maybe just best practice, or is there any kind of specifications on what it should look like, how detailed it should be?
So it doesn't ask you the detail of all your actions, the planning, or your CapEx plan on this, but you have other reporting frameworks where you need to disclose pieces of information that are close to that. If you have to disclose your taxonomy alignment rates or eligibility rates, you will need to show your CapEx share or revenue share, which is aligned with green actions, let's say, which is close to you, and your transition plan should actually help you improving this. And in the governance section of the CSRD, you also need to disclose whether or not you're using internal carbon pricing, for instance. Are there incentives for the climate governance of your action plan? So basically, there are plenty of different places where you need to disclose elements of what makes a good transition plan. Yeah. And so, of course, in your first reporting, you will not answer all the question. We know that it's very heavy for any company to get ready for the CSRD, but please use this as an opportunity internally to build something on top of that, to build a robust action plan and to make your company more resilient to the climate risk and opportunities. Otherwise, everybody will be losing its time and energy. I see there's a question on the use of credits for contribution, rather than offsetting. Just to be very clear, it used to be common in the past to buy carbon credits to claim that we neutralize our climate impact, but this was quite a while ago, and today this is not credible at all. And we never advise our clients to buy offsets, because the urgency in terms of regulation, in terms of climate, is so high that you need to put all your financial efforts in actions that actually reduce your value chain emissions. And in that context, if you still decide to have beyond value chain contributions, it's important that you do not claim to be carbon neutral, because you always have an impact on climate. That's the scientific or the actual reality. But you may state that you're contributing to other projects which have climate or sustainability benefits. Okay, so let's take it as a cherry on the cake, or as a way to finance interesting projects, which of course have sustainability impacts in those countries, but in no way this is contributing to your own action plan. And this is also why the Science-Based Target Initiative, for instance, is not recognizing carbon credits as a good way to abate your emissions or to claim anything. So I hope this answered that question, which is and be clear that offsetting used to be nice, then it became a little bit dangerous for reputation. Today it becomes dangerous for in terms of legal terms.
Thanks, Jerome. The next two questions actually are very much tied to sort of the people side. So from your experience, do you see any people and cultural barriers at the board level, and then also the second question on leadership capability. What type of different capabilities are we going to need going into this transition planning?
It's a tricky question, because it's always easy for it, of course, in one board meeting on sustainability to align everybody and to say, yeah, climate change is so important. We need to develop a long-term vision on this, and then to actually align the short, mid-term business strategy with the climate, the transition next steps. And this is where the culture or the mindset barriers may be important. Just think, for instance, in terms of incentives. You may have very motivated people, fully convinced about the need to have a transition plan, to also in terms of business, but these people may be incentivized in terms of bonus, salaries, or KPIs at the end of the year. They may be just incentivized to continue the business as usual. So you need to soon also set up the dashboards and the KPIs also for the performance indicators of your people or your sales teams and so on, to soon make sure that you align this with the climate strategy. Otherwise, you will have trade-offs, and that will raise a lot of frustration if at some point you realize that the high-level commitment wasn't followed by actual incentives and so on. I hope that answered the question, but in terms of key barrier, you know that the cultural mindset also always comes with dashboards, with performance indicators, and both are really important to tackle very soon in the process.
Thanks a lot, Jérôme. So I think if it's okay, we'll close this section now. We might have time for a few questions at the end, because I see Anne-Laure has joined us. So thanks a lot. And Anne-Laure is the Global Head of Environmental Sustainability from UCB. We thanks a lot for joining us at this webinar. If you'd like, I just give you the opportunity to, you can share, if you have any slides, you can feel free to share your screen, and we will give you the floor.
Indeed. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for inviting me today. I had some issue to connect, so just give me 1 minute to find where I can share the slide with you, because indeed I have just a couple of slides I would like to share, not to burden with too much information or to be a tsunami of slides. We know how it is in companies, but just a couple of them to show you and maybe to have some visual there. Hopefully it will work.
Yes,
so
we see it. Perfect. Yeah.
Excellent. So the idea of me being part of this conversation today was to be a little bit of insight of what does it mean for a company as us, UCB, which is a biopharma company focusing on immunological and neurological disease, chronic disease, to go through this journey of net zero. So how did we do that? Why did we do that? And sharing a little bit of our journey with you all here. On the slide, you have a summary of why we went to this journey. So we had already a target at UCB for climate that was validated by Science Based Targets initiative, but that was within the framework of keeping the global temperature well below 2 degrees. And we realized that was not good enough, that the climate change was becoming a climate crisis, and that we had to do more, and we had to realign our target with the latest climate science. Our motto, our tagline at UCB is inspired by patient, driven by science. So I think it said it all. For us, it's very important that when we do something, we do it with the impact in mind. We ensure that there is a value, not only for the company, but for society in general, and that it's aligned with our strategy at UCB, which is serving our patient that has severe disease. And we can't do that without making sure that we have a positive impact at one point on the environment, and ensuring that we are delivering a differentiated solution for the patient to live a better life now and into the future. And so for all of these reasons, so really ensuring that this net zero journey was really part of our strategy, of our patient value strategy. If we want to deliver value for the patient, we need to add that into the strategy. That's very important as well for companies nowadays in pharma, but also in many other sectors, actually probably even more in some other sectors, to build reputation You can't be a company that attract talent, that attract investors, that have the confidence of society, of your clients and your stakeholders and your shareholders, without having a robust and clear climate target that is aligned with science. And we really believe that in science, as I said before. So for us, it was a no-brainer to go for a science-based target because it was aligned with climate science. As I said, it's unlock also market share. So UCB has done a 1 billion revolving credit facilities with sustainability criteria in it. And we see more and more into the market that those type of framework and sustainable finance is growing drastically and very fast. So I think it's also one other good reason to go for it. Having the investor confidence as well. So CDP, the Carbon Disclosure Project, is tightly linked with Science Based Target Initiative. And if you want to have a good rating, so to again have the confidence of your investor that are looking at those type of ESG rating, that's also a no-brainer to go for a science-based target net zero. Science-based target helps us to have a mitigation, so to play a role in mitigating climate change, but also pushed us to understand what are the resilience piece around climate change. And that's very important for business, like being resilient in the future of what climate change means for your business, for your value chain. So not only for what you control, but what you also is part of your scope 3. It's very important if you want to be still in business in the coming years. I think we have seen a little bit what it could be with the COVID. I think what is coming with climate change is drastically, intensively, more aggressively than what happened during the COVID for business disruption. And so we need to prepare for that. And through the science-based target and through this momentum and discussing and having the right governance within the company that accompany this type of target, it really also helps to leverage this resilience piece, which is very important for business. So really managing the risk, basically. It has also a cost benefit, actually. We've seen that by moving from air transportation to ocean transportation, by reducing the business travel, by reducing the quantity of kilowatt that we are using in the company. So what basically is the transition plan to reach our goal, we've seen that we are saving monies. So there is also a link, direct link with cost savings. I'm not going to say that it's equal. There will be some investment, of course, needed. So I think it's important to realize for a company that, of course, you have a need of investing if you want to achieve those type of targets. But there is also very clear direct revenue or P&L that are clearly seen, but also things that you don't see in the P&L. So mentioning reputation, mentioning attracting talent and retaining talent. I think a company is UCB, we are growing, so attracting and retaining talent is very important for us. And we can't measure the sustainability approach that has an impact on that, but we are definitely sure that there is a clear link for that on having a robust and linked to science type of target with our colleagues at UCB. And of course, we all know what is coming with what is already there with the European Green Deal. And so disclosing and having many regulations coming into force align with the 1.5 target and with SBT at the end. So it also helps us to not be forefront anymore, but just to be compliant with regulation. And so for all of these reasons, we decided to realign our target with a net zero approach. And how did we do that? We leverage really, so we discussed, of course, with the executive committee, with the board of UCB, making sure that everybody was very clear and aligned on the value of having that in place. Now we are in the process of really developing every details of the action plan and of the target for each scope. And for that, we really leverage our green network. So we have already in place a program. As I mentioned before, we already had the target at UCB. So we really used the people that we had internally to really leverage what already exists and up to what level we could increase and accelerate, and what will be the associated roadmap linked to that to reach our targets. And so that's a very important piece of UCB's environmental program in general. We see this environmental sustainability piece as a change management program. So the idea is really to we have a small team of people really making the change, and the idea is really to embed that into our way of operating. So when we have SMEs across the company, we have subject matter experts across the company. The idea is really to engage with them, make them understand why is it important for them to work with us, what is their contribution, what is their value, how they can contribute, and empower them to make the change. So they are the one delivering the results at the end, delivering the reduction, and even proposing the reduction axis, really coming with the idea, with a solution to reduce. And so basically my role is really only change management. So we are a very small team, but the idea is really to have a very extensive and powerful network that understand their role and that are empowered as well by their management and that are empowered by the organization to ensure that they have space, and we have we ensure the consistency within the company to deliver on those targets and on those promises that we do externally, right? So that's a very important piece of our program. It's really this change management network and those green ambassadors and champions that we have across the company in supply chain, in procurement, in manufacturing, in research, in development, in global affairs, and so on and so forth. So all of these people, they are the one delivering the change. I'm just there to fuel a little bit and to make sure that the fire is still burning and that we are doing the right thing to do. Because at the end of the day, even though there is a lot of good trigger to go for a science-based target, and we try to give as many as possible, and there is others that I didn't put, like and others external positive impact on having those type of targets. I firmly believe that the top management needs to understand that it's because that's the right thing to do. I'm sure that all of you want to have an ethical practice. You want to be an ethical company. That's a no-brainer. Every company wants to be ethical, right? For me, having a target in climate and ensuring that you are part of the journey of ensuring that basically human being will still be on the planet in a few years or decades, it's also being ethical to have those type of targets. It just comes back to that. It boils back to that's the right thing to do, because I want to be an ethical company. I want to do what is right, and that's part of what is right, basically, because the planet in a few years, with or without us, it will be there. It will regenerate. They don't need us. The planet doesn't need us. So I think it's just a matter of understanding if we want to be part of this journey or not, basically.
Thank you so much, and Laura, sorry for this. It was a short overview, but it was super helpful, actually. I see we have 1 minute left, so maybe you want to wrap up
just briefly a little bit of examples of what does it mean. So what exactly does it mean? Decarbonizing your heat, renewable energy, it's very easy to do, and it's very quick. You really understanding what is your activities, what are your impact. The first step is to have the greenhouse gases inventory, of course, and to really prioritize what you need to do. Car fleet, employee commuting, business travels, those resonate normally in every company. Your suppliers, where they are, ensuring that you select suppliers that have the same value than you in sustainability and in decarbonizing, and influencing them, ensuring that your products also that you deliver to your clients are becoming greener and greener. So there is many things that can be done, and I think resonate with any type of company, ensuring that you have robust data. So these are just some examples, and you see some names there, talent and so on. That's the name of the department that are owning these targets. So again, I think it's very important to understand that the ownership of delivering has to be across the company. And that will be it for me. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you so much.
That was clear enough. It's very short, so I'm trying to
It's short, but it's always very useful to see, and congratulations for this target and plan in place that you have. It's great to see. It's always inspiring to see it in practice. So it becomes not so hypothetical, but it's actually, it's happening and we see it. So thanks a lot for taking the time to come and share your case study with us. And I just want to say thank you again also to Jérôme and to Laurie from Climact for all of the help in organizing, and thank you to all the participants who are with us today. We'll share the recording and the outputs with everyone afterwards. So I wish you a very nice rest of your day, and thanks all again for taking the time.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.